Today's episode is sponsored by Keeps. Stick around for a great deal with RBR. Hey guys, welcome back to RBR. I'm your host Raz, aka Mr. AMG, and today we've got the AMG GTR Roadster here. It is a limited edition 750 unit car, and it's a bit of an oddball if we're honest, because it's a track car and it's a luxury roadster all in one. Now, I've owned a whole host of AMG GTs and reviewed pretty much everyone from the standard GT, the four-door, all the way up to a first look at the upcoming Black Series, which I have on order as well. But this is the one car that I couldn't really get my head around because of these diverging goals that it seems to have. Maybe that's why it's a niche product. But maybe it is exciting enough to justify its existence. Maybe it's got enough backing from AMG history as well, and that's what I want to show you today. So let's explore together this, the AMG GTR Roadster. So I really scratch my head when I look at this car because, as Chris Harris put in our interview with him, model stratification, which he hated the term, but I think it makes total sense, makes sense for a sports car manufacturer, right? So you've got 911 with Carrera, Carrera S, 4S, GTS, GT3, GT3 RS, GT2 RS, etc., each doing their own thing. Same with the AMG GT family. You've got the standard GT and GTS, which are pretty similar, and the GTC, which is pretty similar to those two. Okay, I'm not really making the point I'm trying to make here, but those are all really good sports cars that can also do the grand touring thing. Now, I had a GTS and it made total sense to me because it was totally different to the 911 and it was totally different to the R8. It was a front mid-engine, long bonnet, muscle car of a supercar that gave you so much supercar experience in a price range that was relatively affordable compared to other things that would be that exciting. Then you had the GTR come along, which was the beast of the green hell. This was meant to be a GT3 fighter, right? It was track focused, active aerodynamics, wider track, big wing on the rear, the 9-stage traction control straight out of the GT3 car, heavily developed on the Nürburgring, hence its name, the beast of the green hell. Makes total sense, it's different to all the rest. After this came the GTR Pro. So really only for people who are really going to track the car heavily. It's got even more focus in terms of aerodynamics and rigidity. It hasn't got AMG's adaptive suspension because it's tuned all the way to the top from the get-go. Undoubtedly the Pro was better on track, as proved by Mauro Engel, but it wasn't that much better just generally on the road. It was very, very much, as it says on the tin, for Pro users. And I kind of fell into the trap of buying it, and I actually preferred the original GTR. Of course, the Black Series is now here with crazy amounts of power, 730 brake horsepower. It is now the king of the Nürburgring with a time of 6:43 in conditions that weren't ideal. It's an absolute beast. Well done, Mauro Engel, on that effort. But the GTR Roadster doesn't fit in any of that, does it? It takes what is essentially a GT3 for the road, which is the AMG GTR. It chops off the roof, and by doing that adds 90 kg worth of weight. You then get a different roof line with a gigantic wing, which I know is Marmite. I mean, what do you guys think of what that looks like? I'm okay with it, but I totally get those of you who think it looks really, really odd. Of course, then the rigidity is affected of the car as well. And often in these scenarios, the steering can be hampered with a bit of a wobbly feedback because the suspension is having to do so much more due to the weight on the rear of the car. So you've added weight, you've reduced stiffness, but you've still got a car with pretty firm suspension and what is still essentially a track car with more weight added to it. And what is the benefit of that meant to be? Is it more emotion because you'll hear more of the exhaust? Will you though, really? Because we've got an OPF filter in this car and you don't hear that much of the exhaust on the outside anymore. Undoubtedly, the interior is now plusher, so you've got a lot more leather options inside for this limited edition car. So it's kind of going towards the side of luxury while still trying to be a track car. It's a little bit confusing for me. Now, the great thing about this is, although it's completely nonsensical in concept, I love the fact that AMG went ahead and built it anyway. And the reason for that is, this is kind of the crazy shit that they used to do in the past with things like the CLK DTM Roadster. Who remembers that thing? Now, this was built out of celebration of Bernd Schneider's win, so it had 580 odd brake horsepower in a CLK way back in the early noughties. I mean, that was crazy. And then they built 100 coupes and 80 roadsters. Of course, the Roadster needed additional modifications in order to handle the extra weight, but regardless, I mean, pundits and journos back then would have said the same thing about that car. Like, why are you doing this? But today, if you showed any of us that car, we would be more than happy to drive it. Similar story with like the CLK GT R Roadster. There's an absolute legend, a real unicorn. Now, this was actually quite significantly different to the coupe though, so maybe not a good example. It had a different grille, a different wing, a lot of work done to it to make it unique. There were very few numbers of this. I think something in the single digits, maybe 5. And of course, it is an AMG legend. So these are 2 examples of roadsters in AMG's past, which perhaps did not need to exist. But the fact that they do is quite cool. And maybe 10, 20 years from now, when we look back and look at the great AMG hot rods of the past with their great big V8s, we'll look at this GTR Roadster with rose tinted glasses and say, that guy was talking complete shit on YouTube. What an awesome car. And maybe I am. Maybe it is an absolutely brilliant car. It's still got that fantastic V8 bi-turbo, producing 585 brake horsepower, 700 Newton meters of torque. The 0 to 60 is close enough to the coupe. Of course, you still have active air panels for the aerodynamics on the front. You've got the active aerodynamics underneath the car as well on the front end. It's still got that fantastic titanium exhaust system, which can be modified and made louder like the pre-facelift if you need it to, and I think you really do need it to. Of course, you've got the rear wheel steering on the coupe, which will make the car feel like it's on rails. So this GTR Roadster really makes no sense to me. But there is one new AMG GT drop top that makes total sense to me. Allow me to present the AMG GT Pram. It's got a number of very interesting features. First of all, it is the quickest folding hardtop in the world in under 1 second. Can be done multiple times. We've got AMG specific forged alloys here, multi-spokes black, as you can see. Green, Beast of the Green Hell stitching all around it. Dynamica flowing through the seats. AMG logos everywhere. And it actually makes sense because it's for a purpose. I wonder if Shmi's got one on order. Matt Watson has been on to me about getting this on a drag race for CarWow, but unfortunately the demand is too high here. The other thing about the roof is it can be operated at any speed you like, unlike the GT, which is only up to 30 miles per hour. We've also got a lovely AMG racing stripe here, as you can see. And it is indeed 4MATIC as well. So really, don't buy the GTR Roadster, buy the AMG GT Pram by Harten Kinderwagen. Links down below in the description. This is not an ad. I'm just taking the piss. So it's nice that something like this, that doesn't really make any sense, exists. There's no real other rival for a car like this at the moment in the world. I wouldn't count the 911 Speedster as one, given the whole wing and track setup of this car. We cannot deny that it is unique in its nature. It is a track car with no roof, with muscle car DNA, with a very long bonnet, very wide. It's an intimidating thing. Can it be exciting enough? Let's find out together right now and take it out on the road. So this car has to work really hard to convince me that it was ever worth creating, despite the fact that AMG have had such an interesting history of pointless track-focused roadsters. Because at the end of the day, we do have to judge a car on its merits and what it was created to do, and I for one cannot figure out exactly what it is that the GTR Roadster was created to do. So starting off with the roof closed, there's quite a bit of noise coming in the interior in terms of wind noise, even when you're driving normally. If we knock it back down into comfort mode, so trying to figure out what AMG are thinking. First of all, it is a limited edition car, as we said. You see the badge here, so we know that it is a very small niche market. It's a collector's car. Then you've got these two diverging ideas of a track car and a luxury roadster car. Two things that generally just do not match unless you're Ferrari and Lamborghini, i.e. something rear mid-engined. No, for a front mid-engine car, you're either looking coupe track focused, or you're looking at luxury focused with a Roadster. Now with the roof closed, you get quite a bit of outdoor noise coming in, so that kills some of that idea of it being more luxurious than the coupe version of the GTR, because the coupe is actually quieter inside than this car. The other downside of having the roof closed in any of the AMG GT Roadsters, be it the standard all the way up to this R, is that you've got that much more packaging between yourself and the exhaust in the rear, because you've lost that element of the hatchback. So you've got all the area where the roof is stored and so much more that keeps the nice noise of the V8 away from you in the interior, which is odd because when you think Roadster, you guys automatically think and say, well, you get more sound, don't you? That's not necessarily the case, because a lot of the time you're driving with the roof closed, and during those occasions you're getting, well, just less sound. And with the addition of the OPF anyway, if we chuck it into race mode even now, I'm not really hearing anything in here. And that's not GTR-like, and it's worse in the Roadster. So let's slow things down to 30 and see if things better now with the roof off. Right, the roof is off. Let's shift now into Sport Plus. So definitely getting a bit more of the V8 rumble coming out of the rear, which is nice. Yeah, definitely a lot more revs, a lot more excitement, which is lovely. But it's still, thanks to the OPF, just not as loud as the old GTR was at all. Nice. You do get the rare odd pop and bang, which is like the old car, but the ECU is tuned in a way that it's limiting all of that, which is a shame. Some nice pops and bangs. Now, okay, the sound is muted, but what it is bloody fast. Stating the obvious, of course, 585 brake horsepower. Very, very exciting with the roof down. But what's a little bit more worrying is, particularly on our UK roads, which aren't perfect, is how much steering wobble you get in the Roadster, which is something you don't get in the coupe. In case you guys don't know, this is quite common in this ilk of drop top, where the suspension is having to manage that much more in trying to make the car more rigid without having the roof structure, that it's doing almost too much at once, and thus you get this strange excess of feedback coming through the steering wheel, and we call it like a wobble, and you get a lot of it in the GTR Roadster. And it's not just when you're doing high speeds like I am at the moment. Even when you slow down, it's more about the uneven road surfaces that completely unhinge the car versus the coupe, which yes is still hard, but very much stays on track and does not begin to annoy your hands after a little while. So I guess what I'm saying is, even when you're driving it slowly, that steering wobble is going to annoy you, and when you drive fast, again, you're holding the steering wheel that much harder, and it's just interfering. Of course, when you're driving faster, unwanted feedback is never welcome. But really, how many of the 750 customers who are going to buy this really care about what I just said? In fact, when we look at the legends of old that we discussed, like the CLK GTR Roadster, the CLK DTM Roadster, undoubtedly there must have been journalists back then who were like, why? Well, I personally would give my left testicle to drive any one of those cars right now. So perhaps it's not fair to look at a limited run car that's so niche with the same eyes that you would look at, say, a standard GTR coupe meant for the track. This is very much a one-off piece with a roaring V8, roof down, big silly wing, muscular looks, that carries forward the tradition of these mental AMGs, built for track, but for someone who wants to see the sky. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed this full review of the GTR Roadster. If you have, please do like, subscribe, and I'll see you again next time. So guys, thanks for watching today's episode. It's actually sponsored by Keeps. Oh, what a lovely day to drive a Roadster and have the wind flowing in your hair. If you have hair, that is. Now, 2 out of 3 guys will experience male pattern baldness by my age, and the best way to deal with it is via prevention. Keeps have made it so much easier to self-treat hair loss, A, by making it cheaper, so you don't have to go broke to avoid going bald, and secondly, by delivering the medication to your home every 3 months to avoid pharmacies and awkward doctor visits. Now, this is a long-term preventative measure. It will take 4 to 6 months of treatment to see results. As we said, prevention is the key here. So take the first step towards keeping your hair. Go to keeps.com/remove before race, and you'll get 50% off your first order. That's keeps.com/remove before race. Support our sponsors, guys, because it really helps the channel.